Welcome to Beyond the Buzzer, where real hoop stories get the spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Wethers, former Division I athlete and overseas pro. Each week, I sit down with players, coaches, and grinders who lived the game but didn't always reach the dream. From college standouts to overseas warriors, this is where we unpack the truth. Behind the journey, the highs, the lows, the heartbreak, and life after the final buzzer.
He's on his way, he's about to get paid. He's on his way to Hollywood. He's on his way, he's about to get paid. He's on his way to Hollywood. Show him the way, he's about to get paid.
Welcome back to the show, KF and JF Podcast. This is Beyond the Buzzer. I'm your host, Brian Wethers, and today's guest is a good friend of mine. I want you guys to leave a like or a comment in the button if Aaron MAXEY has dunked on you. But before we get started, let's check out some highlights. Well, as you can see, the young man can play. He's an old man now, but I remember him back then. Aaron MAXEY, welcome to the show, man. I thank you for coming out. Appreciate you, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian. It's great to be able to be on the show. Of course, being Valley guys, being able to give a little inspiration for those who are coming up, through your program, and the programs between, Lake Elsinore, Marietta, Temecula. Everybody has, a little somebody to look up to.
And I wanted to get to that. So for those who you're watching and may not know, this is one of the most prolific athletes we've had in the empire. Okay, came out of Elsinore High School, started at Temescal, was a phenom from an early age. I believe he started. How old were you when you first dunked the ball?
13.
13. You got me by a year. I was 14, but 13.
Okay.
So I remember just as a youngster, hearing your name, freshman starting on varsity. And, I've never even got to tell you this, man, but you were like the measuring stick. Okay. Like I remember just being like, oh man, he did it. I got to do it. He did it. I got to do it. And then watching you play, being motivated just by somebody being in that area, had the same dream aspirations as I did. And you were somebody that pushed me when I was younger. So I want to go through that. So I want to talk about your journey in Elsinore, kind of you were young, super athletic. What was that like? When you were first getting started in basketball, when did the dream start to happen for you and realizing like, hey, I love this game. I want to play in the NBA?
I think the light bulb went off 8th grade.
Okay.
8th grade, playing, against BD, Baron Davis, Kenny Bruner, as well. Of course, playing against Shea, Travis Reed, who was out at Rialto. He transferred from Crenshaw to Rialto, but when I first played against Travis, I know he was somewhere in the Valley playing with ARC, Jaron and Jason Collins. But I knew as far as with that group that I was playing with and against, we were all on that path, for being able to actually play and make some money, doing so. So I would say it was probably that summer going into the 8th grade. 7th grade was kind of my first year playing on a real team. Played NJB, played all net, out of a team out of Riverside.
Okay.
Had a few kids who had played together. They were all in the Riverside Poly area. So, we used to drive from Elsinore out there, play. Todd Ramasar, who, as we know, super agent now. Todd played, and he was on the south side of Corona. So, we had a few different pieces that were there. But, playing on that team and then having opportunities kind of that spring of, 7th grade, starting to play against the PTIs, which was, the late Pat Barrett, his squads with Shea, Kevin Augustine, who was playing. And then just being able to see where, I was able to stack up. That's where the light bulb started going off. We had Cal High Sports starting to get, some features with that, get some looks. So it started making sense. And it's like, what, I think, that this is definitely the path, with being able to, make this a career.
I hear you. So talk to us about some of your mentors, some of the people that pushed you. I know you came from like, a basketball family, you had brothers that played the sport as well. Was it your brothers that pushed you? Was it kind of your peers? Because you played with some heavy hitters early on. Who were the kind of guys that kind of like really motivated you and pushed you?
Well, I mean, I have an older and younger brother. We're 5 years apart. So, excuse me, I had watched Marcus play,
Okay.
and then he had played at Fullerton JC, transferred to RCC, and really seeing their team, blossom. And he was at RCC 94, 95. So, that's my sophomore year of high school. But, just growing up, having an older brother, kicking your tail, day in and day out, at the same time, being able to say, hey, you know what, work on a little of this, work on a little bit of that.
Mhm.
Ricky Walters and I, we were the ball boys for his uncle and my brother's varsity team.
Mm.
So that's where I met Ricky, back in the day. So we've been tight since we were like 10, 11 years old, with that, filling up water bottles and dealing with the older guys who, they're in high school, razzing us, busting our balls on a regular basis. But, I thank them because they're the ones who made me tough.
Yeah.
I remember my older brother saying to me, hey, I can't, defend you. You got to defend yourself. So I remember jumping on one of the guys and pinning him down. Mind you, I'm 12
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
this point, but it was one of those things where it's like, you're not going to go ahead and just, talk that nonsense to me.
Mm.
I'm going to back it up. So that was kind of the beginning. My parents played sports, but, they just supported, super supportive. And it was, hey, you know what? If you want to play, you want to do this, we'll support you. We'll make sure that you can get to those places. Just at the end of the day, make sure you're going hard with it.
Yeah.
Don't leave anything on the table. So that was kind of the beginning. And then when I left kind of the NJB, the great Dennis Murphy, who still runs, NJB, he had that first year, which was my 7th grade year, he was doing NJB All-Stars. His opportunity to play against a few other travel teams. I was kind of using that as a practice team for me.
Yeah.
While I was still playing against the PTIs, against the Shays, the Kevins, the Kennys, the Barons, etc.
Mm.
So if Dennis would call, I'd always swing through, give my respect to him, go ahead, get a run. And even though the level was a bit lower, it gave me an opportunity to really work on those skills I needed to work on.
Yeah.
So that's where I was at with that. So then by the time 8th grade rolled around, in that second part of 8th grade, March, I started playing in, Slam and Jam, playing out in Carson over at Veterans Park. And then I was also playing in the mini slam at JW North.
Yeah.
And that was actually my tryout to go ahead and see if I could play varsity or not.
Mm. So talk about that. You go into Elsinore or Temesco High School, rather, because I finished there as a freshman. Talk about that, winning the respect of that locker room, being a youngster and coming in and starting and holding your own, to say the least. What was that experience like?
Well, there was no respect. My older brother was actually working with the varsity coach because he played for him at Elsinore, Mark Williams. And he told the guys, look, my brother's coming, so you better be ready because he's kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah.
And so they thought, he was just, pumping up his little brother until we were at Withrow Elementary. I knew the guys were going up there and playing a little bit and caught a couple on a few dunks.
Mm.
So it was, kid can play a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the feeling. I had Brian Bouchatz. He used to ride with me to the mini slam at a JW North. We play, I think it was like Tuesday, Thursdays. And Coach Williams used to come through, pop his head in, and basically see, how we were both playing. I was, putting up numbers, in the league, plus going up against guys who were trying to get into college at that point because they had some guys who were 18 trying to get in, late signees. And he was seeing that, I'm doing more than just holding my own. So that was my tryout. And then, after that, literally had 8th grade graduation on a Thursday. That Friday in June, that's my first varsity game.
Mm.
We playing at Rialto. And the bully of Riverside County, San Bernardino County was Jason Logan.
Yeah.
He started out he was at Paris High for a minute. He was at North, ended up out at Rialto. And I just remember him in his mini slam punking dudes. He'd go ahead, throw a bow, and he was purposely trying to knock people out. He'd laugh about it, all that stuff. And I know a few of the guys on my team at that point, they were a bit shook, seeing that happen. So that was Friday. They saw him knock somebody out on Friday afternoon. And Saturday, he went ahead, took a swipe at me when we were playing, grazed me a little bit. I was just like, I remember from mini slam what was going on. Got my rebound, had my chance. He was there. All 160 of me, swung as hard as I could, knocked him out, took out 4 teeth. After that, earned my respect from my teammates,
Yes, sir.
looked over at them. Anybody else? Let's go.
Who else?
And from that point on, that's where, things really got rolling.
Man, okay. I see that. So going into high school, having that success early, you start getting recruited. When did you start to feel like, I'm on that path to like, I'm going to play D1 ball? And who were kind of some of the first schools that could start to reach out to you?
So, truth be told, I went up against Shea Cotton and his brother James. And my brother was with me. My older brother was with me. So it's the MAXEY boys versus the Cotton boys. Play a little 2-on-2. Coach Romar, who's now at Loyola Marymount, he was an assistant at UCLA. He pulled up and he was watching. So my brother and I, we ended up getting the best of Shea and his brother. Close game, but we ended up winning, dapped everybody up, whatever. But at that point, Romar was talking to my parents like, where are you from? What's your story? We don't know you. We know Shea, but, we don't know you. So that's where the buzz really started going. Still hear from Shea, hear from James from time to time. And, it was just that day we were able to get the victory.
Yeah.
And that was just right place, right time. So with that, it started to give me a buzz, late 8th grade, going into 9th grade. Went to Superstars camp that summer. It was at Santa Barbara. And as far as with that, that's where I started getting some letters. So I know like Santa Barbara sent a few things. I want to say it was like one of the San Diego schools. I think it was UCSD. And then, freshman year ended up having Notre Dame come out.
Man.
So
shout out
they
to
came.
Lorenzo Romar, because he recruited me as well, tough. And it was right at the same time my freshman year. And he was at Pepperdine, and had he been there for 4 years, I probably would have gone to Pepperdine. I really wanted to play for him. He was a really good recruiter, and I really appreciate him just as a man.
Yeah, because I actually committed there.
Okay.
Little do you know. Yeah, so I actually committed to go to Pepperdine because he was there.
Yeah.
Long story short, they ended up having a fight that had gone on. He let me out of the commitment. And then I ended up, things just kind of fell into place with Providence. But I was all set and ready to go with him. And that was after a situation at USC. And that's another story, that we can get into, as we, go ahead and talk.
For sure. All right, I'm going to hold you there. I want to take a break for our audience, and we'll be back in just a moment with Aaron MAXEY. Well, back to the show here with Aaron MAXEY, our guest. Please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment if you will. We appreciate that, you audience tuning in. Aaron, so we left off Providence. I want to talk about Providence because you're listed at what height are you listed at?
6'6".
6'6". So 6'6" going into college, and you're playing the 5. Okay, because I remember seeing you play multiple positions, but I know they always had you at the 5 in high school a lot of time, and I was just ultra impressed to be in the Big East, holding your own at the 5 position. Okay, so talk about like that transitioning from high school to college, and what that was like. Because I remember watching games going, they're like, this brother is holding his own at 6'6" in the paint in the Big East, and that's no joke.
So, long story short, opportunity to play.
Yeah.
As far as with the team, we had just different pieces, at that point. 97, the team went to the Elite Eight.
Mm-hmm.
They had a bunch of guys leave. So when I came in, we were a little bit, I wouldn't necessarily say a ragtag team, but we had a bunch of new guys who were coming in. Had a bunch of JUCO transfers. Some of the guys didn't play due to injury, transferred out. A couple guys were there, they left. So it was just the opportunity of like, hey, you know what? I'm looking to play. Let me just get in where I fit in, trying to get some minutes. So because I could, post up and get a bucket, I got pigeonholed and thrown in the paint.
Mm-hmm.
As with college, different guys go to different places, and you're just kind of like, hey, what's going on with their career? Because I played them in high school. They were a jack of trades. They were getting stuff done. They're shooting the ball, doing different things. And then, as you know, you get to school, you may end up having to play a role.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up happening with me, was playing a role, because I could go hard in the paint, get a bucket, in terms of playing a big, somebody 7 feet, 6'10", 260, 280, pushing 300. I knew I could, hold them up for a little bit before, they just go ahead and back me under the hoop. But, I try to use my speed, use my quickness, use my athleticism to, take advantage. And that's really how I played, in school.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you feel like that kind of helped or hindered the process as you kind of move forward? Because you're at 6'6", you're thinking like, I'm on the wing, I get to play the 2 or the 3, right? But then here you go into college and the opportunities in the paint. In terms of, looking at the next level, playing NBA, did you ever feel like, I don't know if this is right? Or did you just kind of like, look, if I'm on the court, I'm on the court, and let's get it?
It was moving on. It's hindering me,
Mm-hmm.
because I'd sit playing the say no during the summer. I'd
Mm-hmm.
be at the 2-3,
Yeah.
Putting up numbers, shooting the ball. But the whole summer it was spent playing catch up in terms of getting the ball handling, shooting the ball, because as you know, in the paint, you're not handling the ball, shooting the ball like that. So that was, for me, the issue moving on. So any chance I had, basically going home, getting back in the lab, working with a handful of individuals. Dave Taylor, who was, working with the pumps, he has, I know it's a DTX out of Connecticut, but Dave, he was working at Canyon High School out of Anaheim Hills, and he was like, yo, pull up. And this is as, I'm graduating, looking to move on. And he's like, the tools are still there. We just got to knock the rust off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd work with Dave, a little bit. And then from there, once I got out, it was just trying to get in the gym and just shoot and handle the ball as much as possible to try to catch up. So getting a bucket in the paint wasn't an issue. It was just being able to get, my rhythm back.
Mm-hmm.
So, going 9-10 months out of the year, not doing what I know how to do. Then I come home during the summer league, get back into that flow, finding that rhythm again. And then it's like, hey, you know what? I know you played well, in the summer league, but we're still going to dump you into the post because that's where we need you.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's, what that situation was. And truthfully, the only other person who I really kind of felt like who played in a similar sense was Sean Marion. And as far as with him, he had Sparky, as you know, Mark Dickel, running the point at UNLV. And as you know, with Sparky, he's going to, dime that thing wherever anybody's open. So that was, really great for him as far as with being able to be a finisher. And I was saying to myself, if I'm able to play with a guard who's able to feed me like that, because when I play with BD would tell me, hey, just run the floor. I'm going to get it to you. I want to see you bang.
Yeah.
And that's, what we would do with a lot of the pump stuff going on, with the pump and run, opportunities, the invitationals, whatever. But in terms of for myself, that's what I was thinking, like, if I can get a guard who can really, see me running the court, allowing me to get into position, that could be my chance to be able to get in. And then if I'm in the right situation, I know they'll help me get my skills back.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case.
Do you ever watch today's NBA and realize, like, man, I could have been a stretch 5 in this league right now with the game of plays?
I mean, between that, and you know how it is playing in Australia, New Zealand.
Yes, sir.
At our size, we could play the 4 or 5 if we're playing small ball.
Yep.
Running breaker, as you know, and being able to, really stretch the floor out. So I look at it and it's like, hey, played 20 years too early.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I think about that all the time.
Right.
So coming out of college, was there any like looks to the NBA? Were you getting kind of calls or any workouts of that nature?
The only thing that I had some interest from the Knicks,
Okay.
um, but things didn't work out. And when I got out of school, I actually had my knees scoped out.
Yeah.
So when I had my meniscus done, and then from there, it wasn't until 2002, 2002, 2003, excuse me. It was 2003. Went in with the Lakers, went in with the Clippers mini camp. Yeah, I'd done that. Um, workouts went well.
Hmm.
And I remember, as far as with the Clippers, they just told me, "Hey, you can hoop. It's just a numbers game. We owe favors for favors." So I mean that really hurt at that point, but it also told me, "Hey, this is how the business works.
Yeah.
It's not about what you know. It's about who you know, what agency you are or not with." So at that point, that's where I started to look at regrouping. I went into the D League after that. Played well, was trying to find, the right agency at that point, but couldn't end up finding, just the right group. And I'm talking with, because I was roommates with Terrence Morris, who played at Maryland,
Hmm.
and he had been in the league for a minute. He was the first round, he was the first pick of the draft when we played in the D League. And as far as with him, his agent was the agent of Steve Francis. So for him, he ended up not getting a call. We didn't have anybody from our team get a call up, that year. We stayed dead last all season, so it wasn't helping us. But it was the fact that I know after that season, Timo did get. I think he went to Orlando, after that. But it was literally the situation of who's your agency, favors for favors. You sign one person, you get another person in. So that's where I really started, truly understanding the business, that was there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I went in with the Hawks, later on, in my career, and it was still, similar situation with that.
Yeah, I had similar stints as well. I remember doing a camp with the Lakers and the same thing. They ended up taking Josh Powell at the power forward position. We were, there 4 days, and I did well, defended well. Was coming off an injury, so I mean, I can admit my offensive wasn't as fluent as I wanted it to be. Just trying to get
Hmm.
the reps back, but defensively, I was locking in like one through
Right.
five. I remember it was Coach Craig Hodges there.
Hmm.
He was our coach, and he would have me defend everybody. And it just came down to a numbers game. It was about 10 of us there. They took one guy, played the whole, D League experience with Coach Herrick. So I
Hmm.
have a similar kind of extent that you had, and just it's just a numbers game, political game, who you know, but being
Right.
so close, it definitely stung a little bit to not kind of cross over, right?
Well, let's be truthful. It didn't sting a little bit. It
It
stung a
stung
lot.
a lot of bit.
Yeah, especially when you're playing high level ball
Yeah.
in other places, you're
Mhm.
having success, you're seeing guys who've been in the show, and you're out playing those guys.
Yeah.
And then, as you see as your career goes on, you really realize that it truly is a numbers game, because you look at the skill set and you're like, my skill set, my productivity, my consistency
It's all there.
is outshining, this person over here.
Mhm.
Because as we both know, there's the freaks of nature in the NBA. And then you have another 350 guys who are interchangeable.
Yeah.
You go ahead, you put people who actually know how to play and play the game the right way, they can fit into any system.
Mhm. So talk to me about, the next step, because you ended up overseas and you had a long career, way longer than the most that play in the NBA. And that's
Hmm.
just a shout out to your work ethic, your diet and everything you have going on. So talk a little bit about your extent overseas and some of the places you've been, and, where you may have enjoyed the most or what you didn't like. Explain
Well, I
to
mean,
our, because overseas is a whole nother monster. And I always like to hear everyone's experience, because it's all a
mhm.
little different, but yet similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's all different and all similar, because we've all been there where the great places are the ones that pay on time, and we've been in places where they paid late, or you're not getting paid in full.
Exactly.
So, everybody has, unfortunately had to chalk some money up to the game, some more, some less.
Oh yeah.
But, I know, like when I played, Australia, New Zealand, played in Taiwan, Japan, those were, really great, situations, being paid on time.
Very professional.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very professional. And you could actually just focus on the game.
Yeah.
When I played in Finland, same way, same type of, business model, economics, same way. You just focus on hooping, good people around, good club, being able to have teammates where people just do their job. You don't have to be best of friends. You just work together. So I mean that was really good. When I played in Hungary, it was terrible. We didn't get paid for 3.5 months. Had every excuse in the book. But in terms of with that situation, it really gave a lot of camaraderie, to the guys who played. And they're guys who I still talk to on a regular basis. I just saw, one of my old teammates, Marco Sanders, about a month ago out here in Atlanta because his son was playing. So, we had hooked up, and it's the first time we had hung out since, we left the team in 2006. So as you form some of those relationships and have that brotherhood with people where they're always going to be family, regardless of how much time passes, you pick up right where you left off.
Man, that's funny you talk about money, because I can remember being in Ukraine, and it was always funny to me how English wasn't a problem until money came up late. All of a sudden it was a barrier.
Correct.
And then it's communications and all that, right? So there's
Right.
money that I'll never get back, but hey, when you're playing for the mafia, that's what happens. So you're not gonna get that back. So,
Exactly.
but there
Exactly.
there were some great spots. Australia was very professional, New Zealand very professional, played in France very professional. But there were some spots where there's definitely money left on the table, and you said just chalk it up. That's classic, because that's exactly what happened. So
Yeah, I mean, because when you look at the way that FIBA operates, they talk about you can go after the teams to get your money, but you got to break your pocketbook to try to get the right arbitration and get the right lawyer and all that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, you got to deal with the agent who's, hey, take it easy. If you come back next year, we'll be able to get that money. And it's just the mess that goes on with the game. And I truly believe that if FIBA really wanted to do right, then they'd really hold the teams accountable, and there'd be more of a standard that's there to make sure that players are taken care of.
And you got to make sure the league is backed by FIBA, because if you went to a league that wasn't backed by FIBA, then you may not see that money ever, and they know it.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's the opposite side, and you're getting paid through the roof.
Yeah, which is a blessing.
Right. Exactly.
Of your travels, was there any places that stuck out the most? Any place you would say, hey, you know what, I wouldn't mind living here?
I mean, if I was going to be truthful, Australia, New Zealand, because I spent a lot of time playing there, building contacts. I even had a few friends who I grew up with in Elsinore who were living there, who just, picked up, moved, and, found out that they were in Brisbane when I was playing in Gold Coast, and they were right down the road. Had a couple friends who were down in Adelaide. So away from the court, I was able to start making those business contacts. Going into the finance world. I mean, that's my undergrads in that. So I started making those contacts with some of the FAs who were in the area, some of the bankers who were affiliated with the team. So when I was starting to think about potential locations, I was thinking about that. Again, New Zealand the same way, because a lot of those people were affiliated with both leagues and both places, and they travel between Wellington, Gold Coast, Christchurch, Gold Coast, Auckland, Gold Coast. So I was really looking at that. Of course, Japan, great place. I had a couple friends from college who were actually living there in Tokyo. So that was a spot where I was like, there might be something, that's there as well.
Yeah.
But those were kind of the places in terms of looking at life after hoops, being able to get into the business world, banking, finance. And I was like, okay, this might be place. Plus the way of life, was very similar.
It's an easy transition when you're leaving, and from American to go and play in New Zealand and Australia. It's not a hard transition. Just the culture is very similar. Everyone's speaking English. You got a lot of the same food, but the beautiful beaches and just the land was amazing. So that's very smart of you to start thinking ahead of the game, because there's a lot of players that don't do that. But as I guess as you mature and you get older, you start realizing, hey, this is going to stop, and what's around me, right? You start really observing your surroundings.
Right.
Got to figure out what's the next move. So talk about that, the next move for you, because you stopped playing at, was it with 40, 41?
41.
41? Yeah. That's impressive. So
I was still playing. I was still looking to get after it.
And you were still dunking on people. So I mean, I was ultra impressed by that, because my legs shut down on me pretty early. I said, what? Get the coaching and teaching, but it was a moment in my career I realized I wasn't going to get the same contracts,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to spend too much time not preparing for the next level, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, had my body been, a little different, I probably would have continued to play. So kudos to you for that. But talk to the audience a little bit about like the transition from like I'm not playing anymore, now you're what I quote unquote saying going into the real world, right? What
Mhm.
was that transition like for you?
Well, I mean, I stopped playing because of COVID because I was in
Mhm.
China.
Okay.
So didn't really know how long things were going to go for. I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll go down to Australia. I know, people down there, from the business front. So I was thinking, okay, maybe, if I go back to Gold Coast, Brisbane, that'd be an opportunity, kind of set up shop because I do know people who are in the finance industry. If this is the direction that, we're looking to go in. I was also looking at a couple teams because I was, talking to a few teams who are talking about, bringing me in as a coach.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, maybe I'll go ahead and do that if nothing, kind of pans out, but we'll see what the money's looking like.
Hmm.
So COVID hits, it's end of January, everything in China shutting down, get back, it's February 1st. I just kind of hung out, literally for a year. Waiting to see what was going to happen, seeing what the money's looking like, offers, and a lot of the teams, as we know, that 2021-22 season, you know, things were just tight, across the board. So went to the Dominican, um, played in the United Cup, had monster numbers in that. Wanted to see what was going to come from it. Nothing came from it. So at that point, I was like, well, let me just kind of see, have some fresh video, COVID, see what happens. Nothing came. So January, 2022, I'm doing online teaching English ESL, to kids over in China. Doing ESL for Spanish-speaking kids, in the Americas. So I was doing that while still training, trying to see what the opportunities were going to be. Nothing's coming up. So at that point, it's like, okay, now it's time to start, kind of building the resume in a sense
Hmm.
and trying to get away from basketball. So, and as you know, the transition can be a bit of a challenge because you have a lot of people are saying, hey, you're just an athlete.
Yeah.
Even though you have the degree, you have the smarts, they just see on the resume you play X amount of years. Really, what can you do?
Hmm.
I had, a couple interviews. I remember I went in with Bank of America, I went in with PNC, and they were some of the worst interviews that I had had in my life because I have people saying, you're a ball player. What makes you think you can do banking? I got a finance degree, and it's not that difficult to do. But I just remember just being just nitpicked
It's labeling.
because I'm an athlete.
Hmm.
So, that transition takes a bit of time. And then, I went in with, Wells Fargo, who I'm still with, and with the, with my boss, who was there, like the interview, gave me a shot, and I was able to run from there.
And so, you know what? I want to rewind a little bit because we didn't touch on the Nike tour when you were playing one on
Mhm.
one. You were the one on one champion of the whole Nike tour. That was exciting to watch. I remember tuning in and going, "Look at like he's out here doing it like for real." So I remember watching you win the championship against was the brother from France. Okay, I don't remember his name off
Now
the
they
top.
cheated me with the brother from France. I beat
Okay,
Junie in New York.
that's right. And I remember seeing him in France, and I gave him buckets for you.
Uh-huh. I know you did because you told me. I appreciate that.
But I remember that. So talk about that tour because that was exciting. It was something new, and just to kind of see somebody like you grew up with around like on TV doing it was kind of special. So how did that all come about, and what was the premises of that?
So I got a call from Rod Smith, who ran the Say No,
Yeah,
classic,
I remember him.
and he called me. It was probably like May of 2002. Went ahead, called, and he actually talked to my brother Chris. Called the house. I was out working out somewhere, and he said, would Aaron want to play, the one-on-one competition? He's like, yeah, he'll definitely play. And so, he went ahead, put me on. So next thing I know, I found out, and the way that Nike had done it, Nike was doing this in a matter of competing with RBK. So you had RBK, which was now the urban line.
Hmm.
AI was pushing it. They had and one at this point. This is the first year that they're doing the mixtape tour, going from place to place. And so Nike was trying to get in somewhere to kind of have an edgy, gritty, kind of basketball as well. So come to find out, they're going to do a one-on-one tournament. It's like, okay, all right, cool. They sent out a DVD, package. It was just a little demo saying, it's going to be the king of the courts, one-on-one. We're going to, really be physical. We're going to thug it out. That was it. So that's all I know. They gave us a location. It's in, it was Marina Del Mar, and it's in a parking lot of the gas company. Now, my old man worked for the gas company for 30 plus years, and we found the location. My dad was like, I didn't even know if they had, a station here, and it's basically just all the utility trucks. But they went ahead, they set up, basketball courts. They had silhouette dancers. The executioners were DJing, and I'm like, okay, so this is how Nike gets down as far as with their parties. They're rolling fresh cigars out here. You got the different stars popping up, and they had 2 cages. They had fire on each corner, and every time you got a bucket, the fire would go off. So that's how I got into it. So there were 32 guys, and it was 2 weekends. So the first Friday night, it was a Friday night. We got started. I want to say it's about 8, because I remember we dropped the car off at a Marriott, and it would have been about 6:30. They put us in the shuttle van. We pull up. I'm looking at the sign at the gas company. Like, what are we doing here? They had us in another holding tank. We couldn't see anything that was going on. We couldn't see the court, nothing. They said, you're just going to wait in here. You got a practice hoop on the side. And then when it's your turn, you play.
Come on out.
So everybody was just kind of waiting to see. Kenny Bruner's there, Alex Carcamo, all kinds of different guys, are there, but nobody knew really what was happening. So once you got out there, you could feel the energy from the crowd, the DJ, the dancers, all the crazy stuff that's going on. You know what the rules are. It's you got a 10-second shot clock, first to 22, and you're just playing one-on-one, and they're not calling a foul on everything. So that's where I'm thinking to myself, okay, got to have a little strategy, be able to play. I know I can get a bucket on the post because I played 7-footers all day. So I'm like, that's a strength. I'm shooting the ball well at this point. So that's how I got into it. That's the first year, 2002. And so young Kim, who's, the big brother, he was one of the executive producers along with Jimmy. And I'm drawing a blank on Jimmy's last name, but they had put together a demo reel at that point going into the next year, which was going to be the one that you had watched on MTV.
Yeah.
They made the DVD. So with that, they added a couple extra cities because it was just LA, New York, as far as with the Kings. Added LA, New York, had a few more cities, and then they went ahead and had, basically the best eight guys. We're going to play. You're playing for a bunch of cash. I want to say it's like 30 grand or whatever. We were playing for, get another year of sponsorship, ads, gear, all that kind of stuff. So it was another opportunity to be able to play. For me, it's an opportunity to put, the Valley on the map. As you know, we used to get a lot of disrespect just with where we played, where we grew up at. You can't control where your parents are. You just make do with, what you do. So for me, it was an opportunity for us to, get some limelight, get some respect, and to be able to also show that, brothers from Cali aren't soft.
Man.
Yeah. And you know how that goes.
Amen. I used to wear that with a badge of honor, because it was, where's Marietta? We're like, I'm gonna show you,
Yeah, exactly.
Where we from, but like you said, you can't help where you grow up, where your parents are from. But that I think that made us tougher, having to fight through that stigma of they're from California and they're from the Valley, and it just made me want to humble people that much more. So
Exactly.
Into your family life now, because you're living in Atlanta or Georgia area. You're working. You got a daughter now.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about that, man, because that's exciting.
It's dad life now.
Dad life.
You hoop.
You know how it is.
You hoop. You hoop a little bit.
Yeah.
You take care of everybody at the house. We both work. Jessica and I, we work. We take care of Marcy. She's going to be a tall girl as well.
Mm.
But definitely a transition. And we're not pushing the game, even though she got a little hoop here, in the living room. She'll get up in the mornings, get her ball, to get a little dunk.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we just want her to, when she decides to play, just enjoy the game. If she says, "Dad, I want to be nice," I'm going to ask her twice, "Are you sure you want to be nice?" Because then we're going to get in the lab,
Get to it.
start working. But ultimately, just for her to be able to enjoy the game, watching her grow. Every day is something different, with her, as with your kids. But yeah, that's what it is. Being a little bit on the older side, 46, having a 2-year-old. My friends who are 47, they have a couple of my friends have grandchildren, who are the same age. But everything's in due time.
Okay, as we wrap up, man, I always like to end the show with a little bit for the youth. What advice would you give young hoopers coming up, that haven't walked your walk? What advice do you have to the next generation that have that same aspiration of playing it big in the NBA and, making something special in their lives?
I would say, one, to be able to have that bond with your competition, because even though I was a couple years older than you, I played against Bert.
Yeah.
So I had Bert and his crew, kicking my butt on the court.
Mm.
They ran the valley for a little bit,
Yeah.
but again, it just gave motivation. And when you actually have the camaraderie and respect with your competitors, with your rivals,
Yeah.
where you guys can dap up, you can get in the gym, work out together. At the same time, hey, you know what? We worked out enough now. I got to go back and go to my gym. You go to your gym, work on your craft. That way, when it comes time, we got to go head to head. We go head to head. But then, as you age, you mature, being able to stick together, because we never know who's going to be able to open up that door to get to the next level. And I would say that, for those who happen to be, especially in the valley, where we're at, I know things have changed. There's more publicity. We got the social media, all that kind of stuff, but it's still that same thing. Just continue to know who your rivals are, respect your rivals, get to know your rivals, because you never know when you're going to link up at some point, down the line. And just work hard, keep your mouth shut, your ears open, be able to take instruction, and just try to grow.
Well, man, I want to thank you for being on the show, man. We were blessed to have you here. True legend of this area and out here in the IE. So we miss you out here, but truly proud of your career and everything you've kind of stood for along the way. Extremely articulate, and successful now. So just thank you for coming out, man. And I wish you all the best moving forward. And we'll keep in touch as always, man. Thank you.
Definitely. No, I appreciate being on the show. The other thing too, need to get out. My grandmother still lives out in Fullerton.
Okay.
So, when I get back out there, we just haven't had a chance to get back out there. But when I do, I'll be definitely stopping by, seeing you, Bulldog, and the guys, being able to come through the gym, talk to your squads. Because I know a lot of times, I know you guys tell the tale.
Mm.
I know as far as some of the teams, like, come on, that's Coach, that's Bulldog. You guys don't know anything. But then when they get somebody else who comes in saying the same thing, then the light bulbs start to go off.
It holds weight for sure, man.
Exactly. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Right on. Well, again, thanks for coming out, man, and we'll be in touch on the next one.
I appreciate it, B.
Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please make sure to hit the like button and leave comments. I'd love to hear all your feedback on how the show's doing. Again, thank you, Aaron MAXEY, for coming on to the show. Stay tuned, you guys. We'll be back next week.